Okay, so hi everyone. We're back in Beverly Hills. My name is Yoshi. I'm here with my co-host Lily. I have to say, Lily did a wonderful job in last episode when my friend Miki from Japan was visiting. We were talking about racism, and I was surprised because I know you're very smart, but timing's really good for someone who doesn't done comedy for years, so I was really happy and you were paying attention, and whenever you did something, callback, that was excellent. So I was really, really happy with it, and I feel like we're coming to a point like, I'm not going to say John Stockton and Karl Malone, but like we could kind of start...
Well, I could hope Utah Jazz.
Which, probably a bad reference because she's a Laker fan, but...
Stockton was one of my favorite players, though. So
yeah, they kind of
when he
knew.
used to play.
So... We're getting better at it, and we apologize because some of the episodes that you'll be hearing soon, they're out of sequence. So if it seemed a little off, because they're probably most likely the earlier episodes. Anyway, so having said that, I was very happy with the last issue.
Thanks. And someone just emailed me and said, I'm your Robin Quippers tier.
Oh God, great.
I disagree with that. You contribute way too much to be the Robin Quippers.
Thanks.
Yes.
I'm your left testicle.
And you have a better credit.
You're left testicle. Not quite.
So I'm here with Lily, and of course my friend and roommate Joey Kurtzman, and he's always great to have because if you don't know him, he's very intimidating because I think his middle name probably should be Wikipedia because
he works for Wikipedia.
Even it's a mundane conversation, he'll bring something really interesting, and he's able to connect two unrelated things in a really smart, interesting way. So I'm almost happy that he's here because tonight I'm really excited because I didn't think this will ever happen because our good friend and your good friend now, Luke Ford, will be here. And he's here right now. And what a fascinating person because when I first met him years ago, I was afraid of him. Because at the time he was, as a blogger for the business, he had a tremendous amount of influence in the business. They even say he was Matt Drudge of the business, and people had mixed feelings about it. But whenever mainstream people needed any sort of information about the business, this is the guy you go. Not even close. We had our good friend Josh Gross for ESPN. He is the Luke Ford of a mixed martial art.
They have a great deal in common, yes.
Very common. And when we released second episode was with Hunter Moore, who was the most hated man in the web, but the guy who was hated before that was Luke, because of the adult business they were afraid of him.
But Luke was hated for more interesting reasons.
Yeah.
Hunter Moore was hated because he's a prick.
I like Hunter, but I think I'd like to say he's a likable rogue. But yeah, I mean, people have mixed feelings about him, but Luke is just a fascinating character because he's from Australia. His father is just evangelical Christian and very powerful.
He's an extremely prominent theologian in Seventh-day Adventism. Very few people can relate to what it's like to have a father who's that powerful in a religious community and that influential. And he's an iconoclast like Luke, so a fascinating individual. Fascinating.
Not only does faith in one hand, but this intellectual background, because he has several PhD and he's a very, very smart. And I saw a couple clips of him on YouTube, and he's probably a funny guy too. And I think that's where I got the feeling that Luke's sense of humor comes from here as well. So, religious background, come to America, big fan of Dallas Cowboy. This is great. I love anyone who likes NFL football. And he made a transition as a blogger in adult business. He wrote a great book about history of porn. Is it History of X?
Yeah, it's the History of X 100 Years of Sex and Film.
Fascinating. I highly recommend it because I think you're the first person I remember reading about it. And you did a wonderful in-depth research about connection between mob and adult business. And eventually you left that business and now you're back religious pursuit in a different area. And how would you describe that, Joey? He's now...
Well, I mean, Luke probably could describe it more accurately, but the way I would describe it is that, I mean, it was a gradual thing. He converted to Orthodox Judaism, Luke did, while you were in the adult business still. At some point, you became less interested in discussing your past in the adult business, and Luke initially had a difficult time. The Orthodox Jewish community is very kind of precious and concerned with itself and concerned with its reputation. And somebody like Luke is very dangerous for a community like that.
Yeah. And I have to say, incredibly good friend, loyal friend, but so honest. You know, I'm a pretty filthy comic, but there's times Luke is so honest, like, wow, you know, it's he has the honesty of, like, a great comedian. So I'm really happy that he's here.
Let me just get one thing out there, because I know a lot of the people who listen to this show also listen to DVD ASA, and one of the things that the feedback that we've always gotten on that is that, I love you guys, you're so honest, you just say what's going on, and it makes me feel less lonely, and we like to listen to it. I always appreciate that. I think we are very, very honest compared to most people. We're Bush League compared to Luke. Luke has a show that he's doing in April. If you go to that show...
Which is the name of it is what?
The name of it is Eroticized Rage. And if you go to that show, you will see a level of honesty that you haven't heard on DVD essay. Not because we are not willing to be that honest, but because we're genuinely not capable of it. Luke has it's astonishing. If that's what you find appealing about those podcasts, I highly recommend you go to Eroticized Rage. I was fucking blown away by it. Really, it was the single best. It was the single most powerful night of theater I've ever experienced in my life. And I spent 6 years in Europe going to theater, so that says a lot.
And I apologize, Luke. I wanted to go, but it was Super Bowl Sunday. And, I'm sorry. You know, my mother could be dying from a heart attack. I'm sorry. You know, Super Bowl number 1, number 2, and always top 3. So, but. Luke, thank you very much for coming here. I want to just start from the beginning, like your childhood in Australia and about your father. It's just, everything's fascinating. So I'm sorry, we probably have a couple of hours, but I want to hear all of it. And we'll end the tail end of it just getting detail about your show. So welcome to the show, Luke.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thank you so much.
Pressure's on you now.
Let's just talk about Luke the whole time.
Yeah. What kind of kid were you growing up in Australia? What was it like growing up in Australia?
I'd say depressed, angry kid. I reminded many people of a Holocaust survivor. My eyes were just like sunken into my skull because my mother slowly withered away and died of cancer before I was 4. And so my father couldn't really look after me and do his work at the same time, so I got farmed out to a lot of different people.
And there was a huge gap between your siblings, weren't they?
Yeah, my sister's like 11 years older and my brother's almost 9 years older than me.
I see.
So my mother was diagnosed with terminal cancer on my first birthday.
Yeah.
And then so after that I kept getting shopped around to different people.
Yeah.
And I'd stayed someplace for a few weeks, another place for a few months. And it was a bit of a horror show. So I never learned that basic human connection that you get when you can connect to your mother. Like when you can just like look at your mother and your mother looks at you and you start to learn to connect. So I was disconnected and just angry. And I remember when I was about 4 years old, my father heard me screaming and he came out and he saw me flinging manure at these kids and screaming, "I hate you, I hate you."
Yeah.
And just like the level of rage just really disturbed my father because he thought it meant I was so disconnected from Jesus.
Right. Do you remember about your mom?
I only have one memory of my mother, and that is her serving me scrambled eggs.
I see.
That was my favorite food until I got to UCLA at like age 22 and ate some bad scrambled eggs in the cafeteria.
Yeah.
Like that ruined that food for me ever since. But I really only have one memory. And then one other memory that I was told about a lot, where I broke into my sister's perfume collection and mixed it with toothpaste and smeared it all over the bathroom.
Right.
And my sister got so angry and started beating me. And my mother crawled out of the sick bag and kind of draped herself over me and says, "He's only a little boy. He doesn't know what he's doing." And so I think just because I heard that story so much, I maybe have to imagine that I remember some parts of it.
No, looking at me.
As a woman, like, I mean, that just seemed like this. Here's a sick person.
Before the woman therapist comes in.
Wow. Okay.
Well, no, because she has an insight that we're not going to have. Luke's father, I think, is aware and has said that, because I read your autobiography, that he's aware that Luke constantly had female figure after female figure after female figure. So it wasn't like there was a vacuum and there was no woman.
Right.
It was one after another
But
after
do you
another
mean-
after another.
Would you mean that your father, he was remarrying or is dating someone?
No, I was farmed
Or
out
yes,
to different people to look after. So different nannies for a few years. My first few years, I wasn't at home. I didn't really have parents. I was
Because
just
your dad was not
Found
capable
out.
of taking care of you?
correct.
His
correct.
dad was too busy loving Jesus to take
Right.
care of his child. Is that, so
Where were your siblings?
They were easier to take care of because they were older.
Mhm.
So sometimes I guess they were with dad, and sometimes they would stay various places as well.
Yeah.
But I think there's a real difference between just having an absence of female energy as a child and then having repeated versions of it that are taken from you again and again and again. I think in some ways that's more of a mindfuck for a child than.
I remember when my father remarried a few months after my mother died because the church told him he needed to remarry and because he needed someone to look after the kids
Right.
and because he needed a secretary to help him with his French and German translations.
Well, wait. Here's a silly question.
Scheiße.
Why German and French translation?
Because he wanted to get a second PhD. And
Ah.
he was doing it in New Testament studies, and many of the great Bible scholars wrote in German.
Oh.
And so, anyway, he married his secretary, and my biological mother had approved this, that you should marry Jill.
Oh, wait.
What?
This was made, this decision
It was made while my mother was still alive, yeah.
Oh. What do you...
And so
A lot of men in power kind of marry or have relationships with women who work for them because they're nurturing usually towards the man they work for.
yeah, they prop him up.
Yeah.
And so when Jill came into my life,
Well, sorry to continue. So what does that make you feel? Is that strange? I mean...
well, it's the only childhood that I know, so
Yeah.
it's kind of strange to me. But I just want to get this.
Yeah.
When Jill came into my life, I really clung to her because she was around. And when I was about 5, I said to her, "I'm a lucky boy. Most boys only have one mummy. I've had lots, but I don't
Yeah.
want any more."
Yeah.
Is that the most like? I mean, that's
Yeah.
that could break you for a week. Just here, I mean,
Yeah.
I just hope after all the women hear this podcast, they will send nude pictures to look for. It just makes me feel so bad hearing this.
That's why he tells the story.
no, it's full of heartstrings. No, it's not. It's not. Well, okay.
I'm just kidding.
No, I was just going to say.
I mean, this is something that you would hear in a movie or something. I can't believe, it's here. Okay, so you liked her. You got along with her.
Yeah, except for the 2 weeks of the month when she was insane. She had severe premenstrual syndrome.
I see.
So she would just have rages. She was a big woman, like 5'10", and when she'd slap me, I would just go flying across the room, bouncing off the furniture. And so she was just nuts, alternating between rage and depression 2 or 3 weeks out of the month.
Did your father think she was possessed by the devil that week or so when she was going crazy, or did he just say, "Oh"?
No, my parents wondered if I'm possessed by the devil.
Oh.
Seriously. But no, she eventually got the help she needed when I was 18. So, but from age 4 to age 18, she was insane. Half the month.
Just PMS, or
It was severe premenstrual syndrome.
And let me jump in on that because
if there's one person who knows something about PMS,
It's Joey.
Joey.
It's me. I mean, for a number of reasons, but one of them is that I can vouch for Luke. First of all, that my father, as an adult, as that talks with me, look, when you were younger, we didn't know what PMS was. My mom, God bless her, I love her. She was a wonderful mother in lots of ways, not nearly as extreme as Luke's situation, but her hormonal rhythms governed the house.
I see.
And it was kind of scary at times. She wasn't 5'10", she was a little woman, that makes a difference. But I'm just saying that for people who out there who just think, "Oh, PMS, my chick's got PMS, I know what that is." No. If you haven't experienced the kind of thing Luke's talking about, you don't know what it is, and it's legit, and it's extreme, and it's very scary.
And as my dad was a Seventh-day Adventist minister, he could not divorce her because that would end his career as a gospel preacher. And so I grew up in a home where my father was just yearning for my mother to die. Me, my stepmother. The only way out is for her to die.
Is it that obvious to you as a kid?
Yeah, I picked it up, yeah.
Wow. And I'm very ignorant about that church. Can you explain to listeners? Because I don't think I'm sure there's plenty of others. We have people from all over the world listening. How do you explain?
He really does, by the way. It's interesting seeing his stats. It really is global. And it gets more every single week. It's really
we added like another 3 or 4 African countries. I don't know what. I don't know why there isn't. But
yeah.
So the church. Can you explain a little bit of doctrine and why it is so different from other Christian church?
So Seventh-day Adventist means the seventh-day part comes from the keep the Sabbath, akin to the way the Jews keep the seventh-day Sabbath from Friday night sundown to sundown Saturday night. Adventist means the soon coming of Jesus Christ. So the Seventh-day Adventist Church started in 1844, which is 2,300 years after 456 BC, when the sanctuary was rededicated under Ezra the scribe and Nehemiah. And so there's a prophecy that under 2,300 days then the sanctuary will be cleansed. Seventh-day Adventists interpreted the 2,300-day prophecy as a year for a day, so 2,300 years later, sanctuary would be cleansed, meaning in 1844, Jesus moved from the holy to the most holy place in the heavenly sanctuary to begin the final work, judging the saints just prior to coming back to earth, taking the 144,000 righteous with him back to heaven, and then destroying the world in fire for 1,000 years, and then cleansing it, and then the righteous would come back to earth and lead a heavenly life.
Amen. Hallelujah.
There you go. No, and everything Luke said. The thing that always struck me about the because as a child I used to volunteer at the Seventh-day Adventist Medical Center in Glendale. I don't know if I told you that, but everything you're saying is strongly rooted in kind of Old Testament history. I mean, it all makes sense from a you can understand it from a Judaic perspective.
I mean, I think that it makes sense to all of us. Like, as I said that, we all recognize the divine truth, and we may try to deny it, but in our hearts, I think each one of us knows the divine truth that I just spoke.
No, but
you're just one cross away from me on the phone.
It is. It's more like it's for a Jew. It's easier to understand than a lot of other Christian traditions. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Yeah, and anyone who takes the Bible seriously or takes religion seriously knows that if you just take 1 or 2 steps, then suddenly the most bizarre things to outsiders suddenly make sense.
Yes, absolutely.
So there you go.
So I know he was very, he is still respected, but what was the controversy he brought to church?
Well, my father did not agree with this foundational distinctive teaching of the Seventh-day Adventist Church that I just described. And so he kind of kept his disagreement to himself. My father is more of an evangelical Christian who believed that as long as you accepted Jesus, you were good to go for heaven. And so finally, when he was about 50, on October 27th, 1979, when I was 13 years old, he gave this talk where he said that this foundational Seventh-day Adventist teaching was not biblical. And from a Protestant perspective, they believe that there's only one source for authority, and that's the Bible. So when you say something's not biblical, you're saying it's not of God. And so he took on the central doctrine of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And so it created a shaking of Seventh-day Adventism. It convulsed the church. All the church leaders and leading scholars gathered one week in August of 1980, and I was there at Glacier View in Denver area, Colorado, and they had this big conclave which resulted in my father being expelled from the Seventh-day Adventist Church ministry, and our family left the church. And so until this point, until I was 14, I never had a non-Seventh-day Adventist friend. And then we were expelled, and we went out into the world, and it was kind of a cold world.
What's the difference between that and excommunication?
It's very similar. Yeah, excommunication.
Is that only the Catholic thing?
Well, Jews also excommunicate. Sorry,
yeah, I mean, any group excommunicates people, saying you can no longer belong to our stamp club. Or
how does that work? Like the majority of the church had to vote against you?
Well, anytime you go against the foundational principle of any group, they're going to kick you out.
Okay.
So whether it's a stamp club or a football club. So the actual mechanics of it was that the Seventh-day Adventist Church is hierarchical, unlike Judaism, where it's individual synagogues. But in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, like Roman Catholicism, there's a top, there's a leader.
I mean, obviously don't call that person Pope, but what do you call him?
General Conference President. And so General Conference President Neil Wilson, he was a very savvy manipulator, and so it was ordained that my father was going to get expelled, and Elder Wilson, he was called, got it done, and my father was simply expelled from Seventh-day Adventist employment in the Seventh-day Adventist ministry.
But before you continue, because this is something, this is kind of funny, really weird reference, but I like studying Richard Nixon, and he talked when he got impeached. He called this period the weatherness period, where very difficult period of time, but they go through a transformational period and change and become even stronger. Did something like that happen to your dad? Because he was kicked out. What did he do after that? I mean,
Well, he went on and formed his own non-denominational evangelical Christian foundation called Good News Unlimited, and you can find it online at goodnewsunlimited.org. But whereas he was once speaking when he was in the church to thousands of people at a time and hundreds of people at a time, he started now sometimes speaking to 12 people at a time.
I see.
Or 50
Just like my
people at a
comedy
time.
shows. All right.
But let me also say something else.
Yes.
Luke's father, when he gave this talk, it was not some unpleasant surprise to him that he was excommunicated. He knew this would be the consequence. Yes.
I don't think so. I think that my father was in the grip of things that were beyond his understanding. Like we often act in the world, and even though everyone else can see what the consequences are going to be for us, we can't see them. And I don't think my father.
Let me ask this: knowing what he knows, and he could go back in time, would he still do anything?
My father has never been one to say he was wrong.
So he's pretty principled too, correct? I would
Yeah.
imagine. Okay. Yes, Liddy.
I had a question. Yes. Did you identify with religion growing up? Did it help your childhood, given especially since a mother figure was always kind of coming and going in your life and turbulent? How did you feel about having only Seventh-day Adventist friends till you're 14 and then afterwards? What was that like?
It gave me a sense of who I was. And I noticed so many people don't know who they are. And so it was a great blessing in the sense that I have a very distinct identity. And that was a blessing. And it was also a blessing to believe that there was the creator of the universe cared about me and monitored me. So that was a blessing. On the downside, anytime I did anything, it would get reported to my parents because my dad was very influential in the community. So he was a preacher and I was his youngest kid. And so if I said the word bloody, which is a swear word in Australia, it would get reported back to my parents.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
And because my father was so controversial for his preaching, he had to kind of be extra strict with the family. We all had to live up to his impossible, invisible standard. That's what happens when you have a superachiever father figure. It just imbues tremendous feelings of shame because you always feel like you're not living up to this invisible standard.
Right.
So I was afraid of being punished. I didn't want to get hit anymore, so I started telling lies. And then when my lies got discovered, I got hit more. And then there were additional punishments. I had to read 40 pages of some dense work of Christian apologetics every day and type a one-page summary. That was kind of my punishment for telling lies. So I learned all the arguments for the truth of the Christian religion, but more than that, I learned how much I hated it.
Yeah, but because it just seems like a really way to teach a kid a religion.
By punishing them with it.
You only study it when you're getting punished.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I also remember, I can identify with, first of all,
Well, it's supposed to give you a better understanding of what you did wrong, right? It's trying to hit that part of that shame part of you, like you should feel bad because look what is
but it's in the form
and what you should have done.
But it's in the form of a punishment. I remember having, when I was, growing up, having to, I can identify with Luke on a number of levels. One was as a punishment having to write something similar about Judaism and then having to tear it up and throw it in the trash can as part of a punishment.
Well, I think parents don't realize sometimes is that when you issue a punishment, the kid sees it as punishment so that they don't like it, like classical conditioning. However, the reason they're doing it is to try to teach a lesson where the child is going to take something from it that it's going to make them a better human being.
And I'm sure for many people it would. So you take that identical punishment, and many people would have become finer and better for that punishment, gone on to become better Christians. And with my perverse, or just who I was, it created like this latent hatred that I wasn't fully aware of, that I just hated. And then when I grew up and had the opportunity to go do my own thing, I kind of tapped into that hatred and said, I'm going in a different direction.
Yeah.
So, how did it? I don't remember you explained to me, but eventually, how did you end up in the States? I don't remember.
My dad was a very controversial Seventh-day Adventist preacher, and so the church thought that by taking him out of the relatively small pond of Australian Seventh-day Adventism and dropping him into the much bigger pond of American Seventh-day Adventism,
I
that
see.
he'd create less trouble. But it didn't work out that way. So we came to the United States when I was 11.
What was that experience for you?
Well, I love to read about American history, so I was very excited, and it was wonderful to come to America because people didn't know I was a loser.
Mm-hmm.
In Australia, at school, people,
you
knew I was a loser.
Why
but
would
in
they see
America,
you as a loser?
because I used my mind and my brain and my words to put people down, and so everyone hated me. I remember in second grade, my classmate Gavin Brown had the birthday party, and he didn't invite me. And so I was over at my best friend Wayne's house, and Wayne's mother intervened and said, Luke really should go along to the party. So I went along. When I was at the party, all the other kids made sure to let me know that they didn't want me there, that it was only because they had to have me there. And so that is just so emblazoned in my memory.
They were just bullying and just intimidated by you and your intelligence, I'm sure.
And I remember my therapist said, you should call your autobiography The Uninvited, because that motif had just happened again and again and again through my life. But then I come to America at age 11. People don't know I'm a loser. They find me interesting.
Yeah.
It's exciting. I'm starting 6th grade, and the most beautiful girl in the class walks by my desk one
Loves
day.
your accent.
She drops a note on my desk, and it says, "Will you go with me?"
Yeah.
And I adored this girl. But I was flooded by emotion, and when you're flooded, you're immobilized. Also, I had no example for love, because I didn't see any love in my home.
Yeah.
I had a father who had a PhD in rhetoric and excelled at putting people down and driving them crazy with the things he said. So,
Not to mention, he has that religious thing to drop, throw at you as well,
And
So
waiting
I-
for your mom to die, your stepmom.
so I responded, even though this was what I wanted. This girl was Cindy Anderson, was what I wanted more than anything else. This is the greatest thing that ever happened to me in my whole life. I'm 46 years old, and this was greater than anything that's ever happened to me, her dropping the note on my desk.
Yeah.
Never again has the most beautiful girl in the class wanted to go with me. And I responded by teasing her publicly and making her life miserable. But I was so screwed up at near the end of the school year, I dropped a note on her desk after all that, asking her, "Will you go with me?" She wrote back, "No," with all sorts of exclamation points.
Yeah, you can't break a girl's heart like that.
But look, I did,
Teasing them's not going to make
I did
them
that
want
same.
anymore.
I remember doing the same thing. I don't know why I did that too.
Insecurity?
There was one person who knew I was a loser, and that was me.
Yeah.
I knew I was a loser,
Yeah.
and I knew that I was not worthy of her. And I
Self-sabotage.
resented it, and I hated it, and I got angry about it, and I ridiculed her and put her down because I felt so ashamed of who I was in comparison to how beautiful she was.
Did you feel unlovable that she didn't? Did you believe that she loved you, or whatever?
Yeah, I did. I did.
But you
It
still
was the
felt
greatest thing.
compelled to push
But
her away.
I didn't know how else to react. The previous year, 5th grade, was the first time any girl showed an interest in me. There was a chubby girl, and I didn't know how to react. I was not interested in her. So I put tacks, sharp side up, on her desk. So that when she'd sit on them, she would bleed and
You're the
yelp.
Bart Simpson of Australia.
She'd yelp like a stuck
Luke
pig.
also hates fat chicks. But,
And when she got too close to me, I would kick her. And she told me one day after I kicked her, and tears were streaming down her face, she said, "One day you'll know what it's like to be kicked by someone you love."
Oh, wow. God, man, I'm going to cry.
It took me many, many years to be able to express and accept love. I was just so uncomfortable with it because my father hated to be touched because of his own neglectful upbringing. My father has no
It's
ability
interesting when
with
I
emotion.
read about your father. Maybe I'm wrong, but his father was atheist. Is that correct?
I'm not sure, but his father had nothing to do with him, basically. So
I see.
I think his father was an atheist, and his mother wasn't particularly religious. She was a sex and love addict.
I
And
see.
she would just go around Australia chasing men and kind of dragging my dad and his brother along and neglecting
Wow.
them.
And his brother?
Yeah, so my dad grew up, with the chronic anxiety that you get when you don't have a secure connection at home.
Absolutely.
But instead of going into his into addictions like alcohol or sex, he went into workaholism and threw himself into saving souls for Jesus.
I see. So you live in the States. I guess you moved quite a bit as well in the States?
A little bit. I was in the Napa Valley Pacific Union College for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Then at the end of 8th grade, my father was expelled from the church, and we moved to Auburn, California.
Wait, what did he do this time that he...
It was that story I told you. He disagreed with the foundational
okay,
theological
I see.
belief, so he went and founded his own Christian foundation. And he told people, we now belong to the Invisible Church of Jesus Christ, which sounds wonderful, but the Invisible Church of Jesus Christ did not have a big social program.
It was hard to see.
We had we formed our own little church, and about, 100 people would show up.
Yeah.
But 40 of them were retarded girls that were being looked after by this couple. They would take in retarded girls and get paid by the state for looking after them. And girls who are retarded just adore me. There's something about having a missing chromosome, or I'm not exactly sure how mental retardation works, but these retarded girls love me.
Were you nice to them, though?
Yeah, I was nice to them, because I was now in high school. I was a
Yeah.
little more, I didn't try anything with them.
Yeah.
I wasn't attracted to them.
Did
in
they
that
try
way.
anything with you?
No, they would giggle when I came around, but that was it.
I would look. I would imagine because I didn't know you when you were a kid. But I have to say, when you don't have a relationship with your mother, or not having your real mother around, I have to say, it sounds cliche, but it does affect you how you feel about women and relationship with women. And then it's no surprise that you and I, when we met first. Convention, this must have been 2004 or 5 when I met you, and you were very, very nice. It's just that people were saying things about you. I was worried about losing my job, but he said, I told you I work for Evil Angel, this and that. You were very friendly, and you might have given me a card or something. Like, if you ever have a news, let me know. But that's about it. And I thought, wow, everybody's making this guy out to be a boogeyman in the business, but he was very polite.
Well, it's still like that.
Mm-hmm.
When I went, the first time I was on Port Set, I remember you mentioning to someone there that I was friends with Luke Ford, and it was like
Joey Severa, John Stelliano.
Yeah, it was like a chill moved over the whole set. Like everyone was like, and one guy, that guy Dave, talked to me about Luke, but everyone else was like all of a sudden very wary of discussing anything with me because I was friends with you. It made me feel powerful.
Before we go more into that, can you tell us how you transitioned into the porn world from this very religious upbringing? And because usually women with daddy issues go into porn, but you're like an exception. It's a man going.
Right.
Well,
I never thought of it like that.
You went to UCLA.
So in 4th grade, my friend went into his brother's trailer and came out with a stack of magazines. And we went out back and we lay down amidst the tobacco plants. And we opened up and went through. It was the first time I'd seen nudie magazines.
Yeah.
And it was the most exciting moment of my life up until then. Because these girls in these magazines, they truly understood me.
Yeah.
They knew what I was thinking. They knew what I wanted most. And they liked to tease me. They liked to please me. They put a little finger in their mouth. They knew exactly what was on my mind. They showed me what I was most interested in. And just like my dad studied the Bible, I studied these magazines. This was heaven to me. My dad wanted to be in heaven with Jesus. I wanted to be in with these girls.
Yeah.
And so it also frightened me, the power that this material had over me. So I didn't look at it again. I said, okay, I cannot visit this land again. But in 10th grade, I started going back to the porn.
Once again, I didn't realize how much we have a similarity. I was so crazy and delusional back then, thinking they were not talking to me, but they specifically took pictures, having because I needed them.
It's intimate. It's an exchange.
There's a lot of that.
I could see by the look on their faces that they knew what I was thinking about.
Yeah.
It was I felt so understood, and I felt totally embraced. I just felt totally welcomed into their world and embraced. And it was like a beautiful world, and I knew that there was this beautiful, sweet world out there, and I just had to find it.
But did you
Are you a titty man?
Yeah, but
But did you get in trouble when you guys were looking at the magazine?
Yeah, my friend's mother caught him, and she said, "You're not looking at Brian's magazines, are you?" And so she gave us a lecture and said, looking at these magazines led Brian into becoming a drug trafficker and ruined his life. And I was so worried.
Is that for real?
Yeah. And so I was worried, if they told my parents, I would get the spanking Gwendolyn spankings. But luckily she said, I won't tell your parents. But I got so frightened by the experience that I didn't look at this material for another 6 years.
I see.
And then I started, because we were traveling so much, we spent a lot of time at airports. And I'd go to the newsstand to read Time or Sports Illustrated, but all around would be men in business suits leafing through Playboy and Penthouse.
Yeah.
And I'd just get a quick glance, and it was just the most amazing sights. I flushed, my heart raced, my blood pulsed. It was just the most fantastic material. And eventually, now that we were out of the church, God became less real to me. And we finally bought a TV for the first time. So TV became more real. And the sensual pleasures of Charlie's Angels and that other material on the TV was just amping up my libido. And so when I was 16, I finally picked up a Playboy magazine for myself in the newsstand. It was fantastic. It was the April 1982 issue. It had this spinner girl, Linda Reese Bourne on it. She was 5 foot tall.
Spinner girl? You mean tall?
She was 5 foot tall. And she loved to ride horses.
Is that Australian for midget?
Spinner, she
it's
can
a girl
sit
you
and
can lie back and spin around on your.
Oh.
And it was she would have been so much fun to play with. And then, as with any addiction, I started stealing for it. It's when I came home, I started going through my neighbors' mailboxes looking for Playboys. And finally, in the fall of that year, I got the December 1982 issue. My neighbor had it. I put it out of the mailbox, looked around, no one saw me. I went down to this deserted barn, and it was the first time that I had a Playboy magazine all to myself.
Yeah.
And Charlotte Kemp was the centerfold. I mean, she was stacked, E-cup breasts. And it was the first time that I got to have sex with a centerfold, all by myself.
What age did you start masturbating?
So it was the beginning of my junior year of high school. So it was September of 1982. I was
amazing.
16, and I bought this pornographic novel at a used bookstore, and I was staying with friends. My parents were gone, so I went home. House was deserted. I started reading this novel, and as I'm reading, I start pressing on myself.
Yeah.
And I start pressing on myself, and then I feel this tension throughout my body, from the top of my head to my toes. It's all rushing towards my midsection. And then suddenly there's this involuntary expulsion of this sticky gray mucus-like fluid, and it just shoots all across the room. It goes on my leg, goes on the book, and it goes all across the couch. And it just kept shooting. And I was oh my God, I will never do this again. Because I was so appalled by what happened.
Did it seem like a dinner scene from Alien? That the alien just jumped out of the stomach. It was a fucking mess.
I haven't seen Alien.
Oh, okay, it's a great...
I'm not into science fiction. But
Was it like Mad Max when he was... I don't know.
But I feel like I should mention, I just want to throw in at this point for the listener. Very honest. That later on, Luke directed some excellent pornography called What Do Women Want? And also, Luke, when he was in a bad mood, used to have porn stars send him other porn stars to give him blowjobs. And there's a reason why I'm saying that. I'm not going to elaborate on why I'm saying it. But it's important that the listener know that Luke has gotten lots of blowjobs from porn stars. That's worth knowing, Luke, because, I'll tell you later. But also, I started masturbating in between 3rd and 4th grade, and I've always been...
Well, we didn't ask you, but go ahead.
No, but I know. But I'm curious we don't have to just cover it now.
Yeah.
But I've always been a little mystified I'm not any more sexual, certainly not more sexual than Luke. How could, the idea of starting at 16 to me is very confusing.
It's
very
late.
Late.
Quote unquote.
Once again, same with Luke. I did it when I was 16 too, because my family's pretty repressive, and anything remotely like a pornography, if they ever caught me, I would have just beaten many times, So I didn't know any of that stuff because they kept that stuff away. Okay. You got to remember, we didn't have internet back then. If you didn't have access to pornographic magazine or tapes, and your family didn't talk about it, and if your friends didn't talk about it, you were in the dark. I know it sounds strange, but it's common. Like when he was telling me he went to the magazine store, I used to do that, but I usually what I do grab a biggest magazine that is like Sportsman, this and that, put a Playboy in the between, and turn it around facing everyone else, look like I'm looking at a sports thing while I'm looking through Playboy pinout, and every time some kid found a magazine, it was just like
Candyland.
Holy
Like,
Grail.
yeah.
Kids will fight over, look at it, and we didn't understand what's going on. And I'm from Japan. It was very confusing because whenever you see, Japanese magazine, the genitalia area is covered by black box,
Yeah.
penis and vagina.
Oh,
So I was thinking as a kid, like, when do I grow up? When do I get my black box? Because we're so ignorant, and to this day, in many Asian countries, they don't have sex education. These are not taught. So yes, to any kids these days are very sophisticated. I wasn't.
Here's the thing, though, too, if I may add. As a girl,
And feel free to tell us when you started masturbating.
I was very young. I remember masturbating at 4 and 5. And I remember,
Did your dad help you?
Oh God, no! But
What an asshole.
Sorry, I can only imagine. Go
but
ahead.
sometimes I gave him a hand. No.
There you go.
No. But what I learned later was that it's a common response to rage and anxiety. It's a self-soothing technique, and women or girls, especially, you have a clitoris, so the purpose of a clitoris is for its pleasure. That's it.
That's what I hear.
From a
Who has
young
time? Who has time?
Who can find that shit anyway?
Yeah.
When I was 4, I found it, and I would abuse the shit out of it because it made me feel so much better. And I grew up with an alcoholic father, not to get too much about my own family life, but I started at a very young age because masturbation was also a way for me to soothe myself and to get out. And I didn't see porn or anything like that until I don't even know how old. I remember the first porn I saw actually was when I was like 5 or 6 with my brother. We found a gay porn magazine. It was Playgirl magazines in the back in our backyard in the trash can because the guy who lived in the back house was gay. And there, I saw a massive cock and I was like, oh my god, it's so disgusting. So I would masturbate to women. Like the thought of which is a trick, and I'm totally not gay, but I think women are sexy, and I mean that's a whole nother topic. But it actually scared me when I saw a penis for the first time because it was just like, what is that? It's scary.
Anybody have an erection right now? That's really good.
Don't show me. But just that's why I wanted to know how old you were and I grew up in a very traditional household where sex is, you don't have sex until you're married. We don't talk about it. There's no education about it. But for me, it was like my own little secret, and it was my way to just to escape life and also to feel good about myself. But I knew there was so much shame around it from an early age that I couldn't tell other people about it, and I especially could not get caught doing it.
So you didn't know why there was shame, but you knew there was shame.
Oh, I felt that from an early age.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
I felt like I was masturbating in between 3rd and 4th grade, so with 8 or 9, to Lauren Angerman, who's out there now. She's an Orthodox Jew, and she's married. And she has a lovely family, and I was masturbating to her, and I remember I really had intense emotional and sexual feelings for her, and I couldn't have stopped myself if I wanted to. I wasn't ashamed, but I also didn't like getting caught, which happened periodically. But you couldn't, with Wild Horses, you couldn't have stopped me from masturbating to Lauren. Lauren, if you're out there, I'm still interested. I'm still interested. I know you're married. I'm open-minded. Yeah, okay. All right.
So you masturbated for the first time, and then you stopped for how long until you masturbated again?
The next day. But I didn't know how to do it.
Yeah.
So I treated it like a stick, trying to rub 2 sticks together and create fire. So
you remember a Boy Scout?
So I was like rubbing my penis like a stick, and I was rubbing the skin off it, and it was bleeding and raw. But I had to get that feeling again, and so I was like, I would gut through the pain to get that feeling again. But after a few weeks, I found that like a gentle tug. Just like a gentle tug was
Go back to
better.
what is that thing with the Jesus?
Crucifixion?
No, when you have a sign.
Stigmata.
It's kind of like a
it was like a stigmata, except for the bleeding was on my penis.
Okay.
Except no cross and rubbing the penis.
The hand of Jesus hit you. Okay. So this is I didn't have anybody to talk to because I would get hit, so I stopped don't even bring it up. When they catch me with stuff, I get hit. In fact, when I was in junior high school, Hot Love Junior High School in Lakewood, Washington, my uncle had a stack of Playboy. I took it to school and I was selling porn. I wasn't like adult business like early on. Like I was broke, so I was like selling them. So I guess I was really meant to be.
You started very young.
Very young. So these are your experience in high school, and were you a happy kid in high school, or you're not, or?
No, I at the core of an addiction or underneath an addiction is an intimacy disorder. So for me, porn and masturbation is an escape from the dislocation, disconnection, and chronic depression that I have in my life. So I would get high when I would look at porn, and I'd collect the magazines and I'd stash them in the bush, so that as I'd walk home from high school, I'd go visit the magazines for an hour, get high, get off, and go home and go.
Did they ever catch you with that in high school?
No, I never got caught. When my parents were gone, I'd bring the magazines home and I'd spread them out across the living room, and I'd like have an orgy with like 15 different centerfolds.
I did the same thing.
And I'd like nut 4 times in an afternoon.
My friend.
When my wife was, when I was married, when I was wife, I was 4 times is nothing.
My friend Tana Minu, he's a comedian friend of mine from Washington. He's half Samoan and half English. And most of the Samoans are Mormon, but so his his grandfather was living in Samoa, and he converted to Mormonism. And when the chief of the island found out, they basically gave him an ultimatum, which is either he renounced the religion or they're ready to burn him and his family and the whole home down. And I think they burned down the house. Oh. And they're related. I'm not kidding.
He has a huge penis. What's his name?
Tatum?
Yeah. Sorry, go on.
He's
only when he looks at you.
No.
So they were literally going to put him, I think, if I remember, on the pole like savages, literally like savages, and his grandfather literally saying no. So they stopped at the end of it, tail end of it. But he was ready to die for religion. So I didn't grow up in a religious background, but when I hear stories like yours and your dad, and like we're a social animal. We like to be part of things. Aristotle said that we're a social animal. We're political animals. We want to be part of things.
That's one of our basic needs.
Basic needs, and for whenever I hear stories like this, it's hard for me to believe. I just hear it. I'm 43, so I've heard so many of these stories. Like I just have to say, it's true. That like when you believe something like that, they're literally ready to die and have their whole loved ones, because Tana's father said, like, I'm just a kid, like, why am I dragging into this? I don't want to die for it. But yeah, it's whether it's under Soviet Union, people who knew the punishment is death for believing
your social
God.
Identity is
So I don't know what to say, because on one hand, your father is a very principled man, obviously believed it that strongly. But on the other hand, God, there's my crude practical side, like just let it go, like.
Well, principles are very dangerous. Principles can blind you to decency and to the spirit of whatever law it is you're trying to protect them. I think Luke has suffered for that. Being very principled as his father is has cost Luke tremendously in his life, as well as his father. I don't. Principle to me, from my childhood, has always been not really a positive word.
I see.
It's a word that's fraught with danger, and I think that Luke probably would get that a bit.
So when you graduated from high school, did you leave? You just didn't want to be hanging out with your parents?
I left for a year and I went back to Australia, but because I was still lacking in social skills, I still was near the bottom of the social pecking order.
Yeah.
And that means, do people want to be around you or not?
Yes.
So social isolation is just another word for death.
Yeah.
You're the walking dead.
Yes.
You're socially isolated. So I went back to Australia for a year, but that didn't transform my social status. I came back and lived with my parents, and I looked for things to throw my energy into. So I went into radio, but...
What kind of radio shows were they?
I just did the news. I was a news reporter. And then I decided I want to become an academic. I want to become an economist. And so I studied the math, I studied the calculus, I got ready to transfer to UCLA to become an economist. And one day
Can I stop you for a second? That's very interesting to me. Very interesting. Because my former boss, John Staliano, pornographer but also economist, he went to UCLA too.
To be an economist, Luke would have been a way better economist than John.
Oh, I'm sure.
I wouldn't hire John Sagliano to keep track of, like, if I was having my car washed. So I
Yes.
could keep track of the numbers for that.
Wow. I think he was a good economist. But yeah, okay, so obviously, you're a very smart guy. So you went to UCLA. Then what happened?
Well, what happened is that one day I woke up with what seemed like a bad case of the flu, but it didn't go away. And in fact, much of my life died that morning in February 1988. I had no idea what was happening, but I got crippled with what was later diagnosed as chronic fatigue syndrome. So I basically spent the next 6 years in bed. I had to drop out of university, and my life just crashed and died as I knew it. Eventually, I managed to find some medication that helped me make like a 50% or a 2/3 recovery.
Yeah.
What was that?
Nardil, Nardil. It's one of the. It helps when everything else doesn't help, basically.
Did they put you on antidepressants?
I tried all sorts of different antidepressants, but then it was Nardil that turned me around. And if you go to the Wikipedia entry for Nardil, it says that it helps with basically when all other things don't help.
Did it give you energy? Was it a stimulant?
It did. It did give me energy. It gave me a tremendous appetite for sweet things. Because I'd gone down to like 110 pounds on a 6-foot frame.
Oh my God.
And so when I went on the Nardil, I started gaining 10 pounds a month. And within
110.
it was too painful to lie on my side.
Oh, I bet.
6 foot and 110 pounds, and it was painful to lie on my side.
If you want to hear another discussion of Nardil, if you read Darkness Visible by William Styron, he talks about Nardil at length.
The problem with Nardil for me was that it diminishes your inhibitions. And I didn't have many inhibitions to begin with.
Hello, porn world. Here comes Luke.
So on the one hand, it enabled me to resume much of a normal life. On the other hand, I had no inhibitions. So I moved to Los Angeles, and I was embracing Orthodox Judaism. I was going to synagogues, but I was like hitting on girls in the most inappropriate ways. I was taking my sacred fringes, and I was like
Twirling them around.
Waving his feet around like they're a huge penis. Like,
and you're not supposed to do this. This is not how you treat a sacred. And like when I see girls that I like literally push other guys out of the way. And I've heard stories about how gross I was, and I don't fully remember this one incident, but apparently at a Friday night Shabbat dinner, I found this girl in the kitchen alone, and I put my hands on her without her permission, and then I kept calling her for some reason. And whenever she recalls this, to this day, I hear that she cries.
And then you jerk off to that.
But let me just say one thing, in case Luke has put himself in, made himself sound creepy or something. Luke got a lot of the JJ, and one woman I spoke to said women should have to pay Luke for sex that he's that good. So despite the stories that he's telling, Luke got a lot of vagina, and women enjoyed
kosher
giving it
vagina,
to him.
but
no, whatever. Well, yeah, the woman who told me they should pay for it was Orthodox.
But look, I'm still a little. Okay, come back. How did the interest in Judaism start? From UCLA?
Well, I was sick. Remember,
Yeah,
I was
you were
really sick.
Okay.
And so I was looking for a way to make sense out of life because everything that I'd known had been destroyed by my illness.
Right.
And so I encountered this Jewish talk show host named Dennis Prager on the radio.
Mm-hmm.
And due to my own complicated relationships with my father, I've always been looking for a father figure.
Yes.
I've always sought out older men as mentors.
Yes.
And more than that, I've always been searching for rescue.
Right.
Like I'm like a love addict. I'm just seeking someone to come along and rescue me from the misery of my life. Mm-hmm. And when I just heard Dennis Prager's voice, this deep, resonant, powerful voice, I just love powerful people. I love powerful men, powerful women. I don't have sex with powerful men, but I just want to connect with them because I feel like they can rescue me. So just like listening to Dennis Prager and the things he said, I felt like this could transform my life. And I became excited about Judaism. I said, okay, this will give me...
Is that a religious radio talk?
He talks about religious and secular topics.
I see.
So I was excited by everything You had to
What
sort
did you connect with Judaism that you felt would improve your life?
Well, at the time I was really into Marxism, and I thought Marxism was the way to make a good world. But then Dennis Prager presented Judaism as this step-by-step detailed system for morally educating people, and that's how it would make a good world.
Yes.
So rather than trying to change the economic system, which was Marxism, which would supposedly create goodness, I saw Judaism had a more realistic attitude that people are not basically good, and that everybody needs to be morally educated and refined. And I said, wow, that makes sense. And this is the way to make a better world, not Marxism, not communism. This is the way moral education and the Torah and the system of laws that Judaism has, and the strong intellectual tradition that the Jews have developed, and I found Jewish culture fascinating, Jewish history,
Yes.
and I just became absolutely mesmerized. I said, wow, if I pour myself into this, I'll be able to let go of my porn demons and my sex demons, and I'll be able to let go of my depression and my misery, my dislocation, disconnection from other people, my messed up relationship with my family, with my parents, and my father. I'll be able to let all that go and be reborn as a Jew and create a new life where I will connect with people and learn to bond and create something good and holy.
So in the 20s, you spent studying Judaism.
Yeah.
I see.
And so I totally embraced Judaism. But what happened was I was still very isolated, and I had this overwhelming conviction that there were answers out in the world for my illness and for my problems that I probably wouldn't find on my own. So I started placing a lot of singles ads.
Yeah.
And I knew that about 1% of women are mesmerized by it.
Yes.
I knew that. So
1%?
Yeah.
Where did that number come from?
It's just my life experience. So it was simply a numbers game. I just had to answer as many ads as possible and place as many ads as possible to try to cast my net as wide as possible. This is before the internet. This is like 1992, 93. And I'm living at home with my parents, knowing...
Were they living in Los Angeles at the time?
No, this is in Northern California.
Okay.
And it's isolated, and I'm so lonely, I just want to connect. And I connected with this 20-year-old Jewish woman who had E-cup breasts. And I was so religious at the time.
Perfect.
Wait, did you say E-cup?
E-cup.
So she put E in a Jew.
A lot of Jewish women are
Okay, I'll just make
And then
it
you
sure.
put cum in her eye.
Well, I was so religious at the time I wouldn't even shake hands with women. But when the second time she came to visit me, the first time I was pretty righteous. Second time she came to visit me, I picked her up at the bus station, and as we were driving home, I said, "Tell me about all the times that you've been raped."
That what?
That was your opening question?
Yes.
Oh, this
No
girl.
wonder it's only 1%.
This girl.
So what happened?
This girl was very rapeable. It seemed like.
Because of her large breasts.
There was just something. You need to put a condom on your microphone.
Oh yeah, where is that?
So it seemed like.
I'm glad. No. I'm glad you said that because I've gotten in trouble on stage, but off stage too, because it's such a horrible thing to say. But I don't know how many times, Luke, I will meet a woman, and I don't even know her. I just barely meet her, and I'm already mentally mouth fucking her. You know what I mean?
Well, this poor girl, she would, a guy would take her into his car out in the parking lot of her high school.
Yeah.
And she'd think, oh, this is nice, he likes me. And then he would grab the back of her head and force it down onto him and force her to give him a blowjob.
Yeah.
Or another time, she and the neighborhood boy, when she was just 12 years old, they broke into her father's porn collection and started watching Debbie Does Dallas. And the next thing she knows, this little boy is grabbing her by the back of her head and forcing her to give him a blowjob. And another time at a party...
Wait, so did you know, because sometimes I pick up on that energy. I think I'm put above average in that. So you felt that energy from her, right? Something must happen to her.
Well, she happened to mention that she'd been raped.
Oh, okay.
So then I needed to know every single instance when she'd been raped. So
How old was she?
She was 20.
20.
And so I was so primed now. She told me all these different stories. But she said if I raped her, she'd scream. So I let her, she went to bed.
Yeah.
I went to bed in my room. The next morning I got up. I gathered some paper towels. I gathered a condom.
Yeah.
I patted into her room. And I just started caressing her.
Yeah.
And I said, how does that feel? And she said, I wish it was your cock. And then away I went. And it was magnificent. It was only the second woman that I'd been with in my life. But my first girlfriend, the first woman, she was only an A cup. So I climbed the ultimate mountain. I was with an E cup. It was such abundance. She was only 5 foot tall. Mm-hmm. She was all breasts. Yeah. And I was right on top of them. And I was just going to town. And then when I was finished, we went out. I was making her breakfast. And she turned away from me and she said, "Luke, what color are my eyes?"
No.
And I said, they're green.
They're white now.
She said, no, they're brown.
Wow, good answer.
Brown's the default. You see straight into her soul. You don't know shit like the color.
So were you right?
No, I was wrong.
Is any man ever right about that question?
But 2 is the loneliest number. When you've only been with one woman, sex is so sacred and so special, you can see how you could just go with that one woman for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
But now I'm off to the races.
Yeah.
Now suddenly I know what it's like to have sex with 2 women.
Yeah.
And I see that this isn't just something that has to be sacred and special. This is something that can be fantastic. Yeah. And so I'm off to the races. I'm just sleeping with every woman that I can.
You never got hookers, though.
No, never got hookers. And also because I'm so needy. Because I'm sick and my life has fallen apart, and I find out, if I can have sex with women, I can also get their heart, and I can suck them dry of nurturing and succor. And then one woman takes me to a psychiatrist who gets me on the Nardil, which turns my life around. And so other women give me other gifts and take care of me in various ways. And so I'm trying to fill myself up and catch up on all the life that I've missed, the 6 years in bed, the dislocation and disconnection that I've suffered all my life. I'm just trying to make up for that by getting inside as many women as I can.
Did it work?
It did to some extent. It really fulfilled something very deep. It's now, okay, if I die now, I know what it's like to experience the keenest pleasures. And with them, an emotional intimacy, you get to know someone more intensely in one night than you would in 6 months of non-sexual dating.
Yeah.
It was I finally got to experience the very marrow of life.
Yeah.
That's a great quote.
Yeah. And I'm a cuddler, but I still feel the same way. That welcoming thing, the physical, sexual welcoming is kind of. There's a reason that the French call. I don't know how you say it in French, but the orgasm is a little death. A little death. Yeah.
I read that article.
Yeah, that's right.
La petite mort.
Something like that.
That means
the little death.
The little
death.
Yeah, or the little shit. But the little death. No, it is you're kind of after that kind of welcoming from a woman. Part of you is ready to die at that moment. You've got much.
I knew I could relate it to you, Luke, but the more we talk, I understand, because when you initially didn't know anything about pornography and introduced to it, it's just like a high. You can go crazy, and I did that phase for a long time. Then of course you get into more hardcore pornographic stuff. I remember when I turned 18, I was attending El Camino Community College at the time, and I remember my friends were still in high school. Oh no, I think I was 18. I was still in high school, and we would drive to these warehouses in LA, and my friends had to stay outside because they were still 17, and I would go in and buy a bunch of pornographic material, and I was heavily into that. And this is late 80s, but there's a point where you get tired of it, porn. Then I was in the hooker phase for a long time, and that shit is just exciting.
Absolutely.
You go crazy. I went really crazy last.
But I do have to.
Do you feel like? Does that mean? Do you feel like you're chasing a high? And then you have to take it to another level. That's why you went. I don't know.
I'm sure. I'm still interested in the hooker phase, but eventually I know myself. Even that will get old. I'm just not worried about what I'm going to do next after hooker, because.
You're reaching a limit
killing
there.
people.
Yeah.
Children.
No.
Animals.
I know myself enough that I wouldn't be interested in that. But I hope that hooker things last long enough where I reach the age, 60 or something, where I know I'll probably start not being interested in sex.
Yeah.
Well, what about monogamy? Ever crossed your mind?
Just to throw out something really crazy.
I mean, that's ridiculous.
No, when I was younger, I used to describe myself as my sexuality. People ask me, "Are you gay or straight?" I'd say I was a monogamous. But the other thing is that people don't know. This is kind of irrelevant, I guess, to the conversation. Is that, but when you start having those porn things, see what I discovered at third, fourth grade. That there are girls out there who are just as fucked up as we are, and are just as sexualized by their own traumatic experiences as we are. And
yes, we are.
Yeah, and so you can at that age you don't even have to start with pornography. You can start with real girls.
Yeah.
You just have to spot them.
You have to find your daddy issues.
Yeah. You have to find out girls who really are damaged from daddy issues, and then you're in.
So look, new discoveries. This is exciting, and it's normal. And the only difference with you, with the rest of the world, is you're very honest about it. So you're interested in women. Were you interested mostly Jewish women?
It was mainly Jewish women,
Okay.
but maybe 60% Jewish women.
Okay.
40%
Was that a
women.
coincidence, or you sought them?
No, I sought Jewish women because that was the new direction for my life. I was all about things Jewish, and I wanted to taste as much of Jewish culture as I could.
Now,
Brilliant.
Wonderful.
so did you convert to Judaism?
I converted to Judaism.
Can I ask you something? What was your dad's reaction when he heard about it? How did your dad hear about it? This is, you know what it is? I mean, this is maybe a silly example, but I can't imagine if you're a massive Boston Red Sox fan. The dad is like a massive Red Sox fan, and the son says, "Dad, I have a news for you. I'm a New York Yankee fan." I mean, it sounds
Betrayal.
It sounds so frivolous, but you go that part of the country, it's a serious business over there. Serious.
I think this is even more serious.
Yes, I realize that.
Yeah.
I'm talking about celestial Red Sox versus.
And before Luke answers, let me also just say this: becoming a Jew, an Orthodox Jew, converted to Orthodox Judaism, it's not like becoming a Muslim where you just have to say like Muhammad alhamdulillah watashi wa o kama des. You have to actually.
Money went from Cassius Clay to Muhammad Ali.
He just said I'm gay in Japanese. But go ahead.
But I did. But first I said welcome Muhammad.
Yeah.
But you it's really a rigorous, difficult process. You have to really put a ton of effort and energy into becoming an Orthodox Jew. And Luke did. So this wasn't just some little fly-by-night.
Before you answer, this is my impression. Like, if I was your dad, like, it just seemed like an ultimate betrayal. I mean, it's embarrassing because
I would, as a parent, I would feel, or I would project that the parent would feel like they were a failure almost, especially as this ordained huge general commission, whatever of the Seventh Day, and your son's a Jew. The shame
it's a huge rejection.
Yes.
Yeah, a Jew who betrayed Jesus. But
what did I do wrong?
Yeah, I mean,
as a parent,
as a teacher who preached the congregation. I mean,
it's a disgrace before his congregation.
Yeah, it's just like he can't even convert his. I mean, I can't even imagine what that like.
Right.
So I was chronically ill when I became interested in Judaism, and my life had fallen apart. So my parents couldn't really attack it because it was like the only thing that I was holding on to.
Since Jesus couldn't heal you,
well, they said, if you believed in Jesus, maybe he'd heal you. But they could see I was just all about Judaism. And I'd wear a yarmulke around the house, and I'd wear my fringes around the house. I'd answer their phone, shalom.
Oh my God!
I grew a beard, and one day I came home after I passed the Jewish law court to become a Jew in late 1992. And I was in the kitchen, my dad was reading a book, and I said, "Dad, I passed my Jewish conversion this evening." And he looked up from his book and he said, "Well, there's something not like the Seventh-day Adventists out there proselytizing." Because he knew how hard it would be for me to... and remember, I was still...
Wait, he knew how hard it would be for you
to convert to Judaism.
Yeah,
He
very
knew how many
difficult.
times I'd been turned down, kicked out.
Yeah.
just like your dad. Mm-hmm.
Well, no,
in the sense of your dad's been kicked out of church. And
Right. But it took a lot of tenacity for you to...
Right. And he thought that was a bitter pill, and he worried about my heavenly salvation, but it was nothing to when I became known as the king of porn. That was like the ultimate humiliation. That was like 1,000 times more humiliating to my family than my.
But let me ask you, what did other Jewish people think when they found out your background? That's got to be surprising to them, right? I mean,
well, many don't care.
oh, they don't.
Yeah, many don't care if you're interested, but
Yeah.
most Jews aren't particularly interested in other religions. They don't.
No, he's talking about the pornography.
No. I'm talking about.
Christian.
I'm talking about what did the Jewish community think about you, knowing your background. That was
Like some people were interested,
Uh-huh.
but it wasn't really a big deal. Like Jews aren't impressed by conversions.
They're not. Okay.
They're not seeking converts. They're not impressed by converts. They're not seeking salvation for sinners. It's not like Christianity with
Right.
Jesus. It's a completely different.
Because Jews don't have missionaries, right?
Right, Jews don't have missionaries. They're not seeking converts. They're not impressed.
They don't have missionary, but they have Mossad. So
That's right. We will no, but seriously, I mean, even when visiting my cousins in the settlements who are like, and I remember saying something, oh, sorry if I'm doing this, and he's like, basically like, don't give a shit what you do. Like they don't care in the same way that Christians do.
Yeah. Jews are difficult to impress.
Wow.
They don't care.
Yeah.
well, that makes sense because for thousands of years, people tried to kill you guys. You guys are able to manage to survive
Right.
each time. So
Yeah,
just
if we had a
think-
hissy fit over every single one of them, it would have been rough over time. Yeah. Oh, really? Like,
So
you got to roll with it.
So you converted. So let me tell me the period between when you converted and once you decide to get into adult business. What was that period like?
Yes.
Okay, so I converted at the end of 1992,
Okay.
and I get well in the beginning of 1994.
Right.
I moved to Los Angeles,
Okay.
and I'm kind of searching, trying to create a new life because I'm
Why LA?
Because Dennis Prager said he might have work for me if I moved to LA.
Oh, you contacted him.
Yeah, I met him in person, and he said, if you come to LA, I might have work for you.
Okay.
So I came to LA,
Wow.
and he kind of saw how screwed up I was, and there wasn't any work.
But how did you connect with him? Because you have to understand, for those who may not know, Dennis Prager, growing up as a Jew in Los Angeles, is like a very authoritative voice.
Is he a neocon?
No, well, forget his politics. He's a very influential Jewish voice. And when Luke told me he had all these contacts with Dennis Prager, it was kind of like, well, wow, how did that happen? Like,
Well, I call his show every week and argue with him. And
That's how you build a friendship, argue with
That's usually
someone.
how I have sex with men.
yeah.
and then I would write him letters, and he called me once at home, and he said, if you're ever in LA, like, you can sit in on my radio show.
Interesting when you say letter, and because these younger kids don't understand, people back then actually wrote letters,
Yeah.
put stamps, and sent it in. Okay.
Fucking barbarians.
And so when I met Dennis Prager in person the
Yeah.
first time, I'd written him letters about how he changed my life, and he'd written to people. I was handing out his materials right, left, and center, and he'd
Yeah.
written to people, anyone's a friend of Luke Ford's a friend of mine. I finally got to meet him in person, and he says, it feels so good to meet you, to know that, you're carrying on the work, that something happened to me, that you'll carry on these ideas that I believe in so passionately. And if you're in LA, I think I might have work for you. And so I would have followed him anyway.
Okay, I got to throw in something right now.
Yes.
The fact that Luke had that impression on Dennis Prager is really something to me, because in my experience, I've met him twice. Dennis Prager is an asshole.
Is he?
Like, yeah, really. This is just my experience. I'm not. But the fact that Luke made that kind of impression on Dennis Prager is quite something, because again, he's a very prominent figure in Los Angeles Judaism, and is from what I've seen, he's a fucking prick. So the fact that Luke
Is he still influential now?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Well, what would you argue with him about?
Well, the best way to express it is with a song. I don't have as many friends because I'm not as pretty as I was. I kick myself at times because I've lied. So I'll have to learn to stand my ground. I'll tell them I won't be around. I'll move on over to your town. Hey, hi. And you be the captain, and I'll be no one. And you can carry me away if you want to. And you can lay low, just like your father did. And if I tread upon your feet, you just say so, 'cause you're the captain and I am no one. I tend to feel as though I owe one to you. I've handed all my efforts in. I've searched here for my second wind. Is there somewhere here to let me in? I asked. So I slammed the doors, they slammed at me. I figured out my destiny. I know where I'm going at last. So it was like he was the captain.
This is the first time somebody actually sang the song. Thank you.
That's the first song, and the first song to Dennis Prager.
We had a rap last week.
Oh, that's right.
Oh my God, Andy
It's
Milionakis.
Yeah.
I prefer this. Yeah.
Oh,
Wow.
that touched my soul.
Wow. All right.
So there's obviously, Joe, you're a very likable guy for whatever reason.
Extremely likable.
Extremely likable, didn't work out.
Extremely.
But there's something about you connected with him. What?
Nothing. Sorry, continue.
So
Didn't
you
work out. Didn't work out. Yeah.
Yeah. Like two pieces of puzzle, Luke and Dennis clicked, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you moved down here thinking he has a job for you,
Yeah.
and he doesn't.
Yeah,
That's a very typical LA story, isn't it? Whether you're
I can help you out. I got
whether it's
connections.
actor, writer, in
Yeah.
the movie business,
Yeah.
comic,
But in my
same fucking story about LA.
But in my experience, Dennis Prager is good for his word. I have had some interactions with him where he said he'd do something and he came through on it. So I believe Luke when he said there was some kind of second thinking that happened after he met Luke. Because I arranged for Dennis Prager to participate in the debate. He was as good as he did everything he said he would do. So he's not just a particular LA kind of freak.
Well, the way you said it earlier, Luke, it seemed as if when he met you, the way you said it in this kind of self-deprecating way was that you were too crazy or something like that. Something negative about yourself that he said, I don't want to, you don't need to be working with me. What was that? Did I read into that too much, or was there something there that you felt changed his opinion of you when he met you in person?
Yeah, I think once I started spending more time. We went to the same synagogue, and I'd moved to LA, and I got to know him, his assistants, spent some time. I think he started to sense this is not someone I want to work. Though the ostensible reason was, I got slammed by these new health insurance bills, and I just can't hire anyone right now.
Well, what do you think that was?
I think he just, when you sense that there's something off about someone.
Well, what do you think that is off about you? I mean, you don't seem like an off person. You seem very dedicated and passionate, but someone who pursued this as someone who your life was saved by this, essentially.
Here.
How does that come off as off?
Okay, so the person who was running Dennis Prager's operation at the time was Mark Wilcox. And I'd met with Mark for 2 hours, and it went great. And then I called him and said, hey, Mark, Dennis said that I could sit in on his radio show. And Mark said, well, I don't handle that. And I said, well, Dennis, I pressed the point, and I rubbed Mark the wrong way. And that's when it suddenly went south.
That was the breaking point.
That was the
Who
breaking
gets to
point.
sit in on Dennis's radio show? Nobody does. That's unheard of.
So I did get to sit in, then I approached Dennis, and Dennis said, yeah, talk to me, what's a good day, and, come in. So I did get to sit in, but I think because I had that broken conversation with Mark, suddenly there was no job offer forthcoming, and I was waiting around for it to happen, and this bossy Jewish girl who'd come into my life kind of heard me talking, and she went and called the office and said, hey, this guy's waiting around for a job. You should let him know one way or another. And so the next day I got a letter saying we can't hire you.
First of all, for you to have gotten anyone to have considered, the offer to sit in on Dennis Prager's radio show, unheard of in my life. I never remember him having anyone just sit in on his radio show. That's huge. Second of all, bossy Jewish girl calling, telling them, you put up or shut up. This is one of the reasons we avoid Jewish women. I know you don't have a choice anymore, but this is what they do.
Or at least nail them.
Yeah.
Well, Diana, the E-Cup, as soon as I went off with someone else, she called Dennis Prager's office and told them that I was a user and abuser.
No, she's trying to ruin your reputation.
Yeah, and I noticed that everyone would go to Dennis Prager whenever they had any complaint about me. Like when I was a kid, they would go to my father. But because people knew that I venerated Dennis Prager now more than anyone, as soon as they had a problem with me, they'd go to Dennis Prager and complain.
Well, it's not just because you venerated him; it's because you made an impression on him that no one else had made. Clearly, I mean, he wasn't handing out invitations for people to sit on his fucking radio show.
Right.
That's very, very unusual.
So sorry. So it doesn't work out. So what did you didn't move back? You stayed in L.A.
No, I stayed in LA, and
So what did you do?
I thought I need to write a book.
Okay.
And so I want to develop on some ideas that Dennis Prager has talked about briefly on how to be a good person. I want to write a whole book on how to be a good person.
Okay.
So I sent Dennis Prager a letter and say, hey, I'd like to develop on a handful of your ideas here and turn them into a book.
Okay.
How would you feel about that? And you wrote me back saying, please do not do that. So then I thought, what I should...
Wait, why do you think he said no?
Well, I understand that people are protective of their ideas and they don't want someone else coming. So I understood that. So I thought, okay, what's another topic? I'm really interested in porn. So I went to the...
How did that happen? Like, you went from one extreme to another.
Well, I knew I was still interested, and Dennis Prager recommended books by a UCLA psychiatrist, Robert Stoller, books that he'd written on the dynamics of sexual excitement.
Right.
So as I was researching Robert Stoller's books, I found that he'd written 2 books on the porn industry. So I thought, if Dennis Prager venerates this man who has written books on the porn industry, then I too can be someone that Dennis Prager has high regard for. You know, I'm totally within the Dennis Prager vision.
But did he like the book that you ended up writing?
I'm not sure he's a big fan.
I see.
Were you just looking for a father figure?
Yeah, I was looking for a father figure, but more than that,
Don't we all? I mean,
I agree.
don't men do that now?
I was looking for rescue.
Yeah, like someone to, save
Someone, like, if I just, like, followed what he said, I hoped that would rescue me. But it didn't shift my emotional addictions, though at the time I didn't realize I had any emotional addictions.
And I actually did read the book. It was very, very helpful. And it gave, because when you work in adult business, it's not like you could go community college and take Porn 101 and learn every aspect of merchandise business, marketing, and history of it. So the way I learned was bits and here and there, but I didn't really have a one definitive work gives me the big picture of the adult business. And someone I was saying on our podcast, the Amateur Historian, I really, really enjoyed it. Like, I knew bits and pieces, but you filled us gaps that I didn't understand. Like, I didn't understand the porn and mob connection, and you did an excellent job. And other performers I wasn't really familiar. And this is a problem with, I think, a lot of the young new performers these days. They have no idea the history of porn and all the men and women and transsexual who paved the way for
no reverence for tradition.
No tradition at all. No tradition at all. And that's why when I saw you, I was a little hesitant, but I wanted to talk to you when I saw you. And when I met Bob Chen, those of you who don't know who he is, one of the first Asian American pornographer who worked with John Holmes, and
the Martin Luther King of the porn industry.
Yeah,
Asian American community.
I really studied
He had
it.
a dream.
Yes.
One day, yellow people,
he had a wet dream.
Black people would join together to create pornography.
interracial porn.
Yeah.
Interracial
They
porn.
just want Asian guys having sex with white women. That's really what they need.
So this is amazing. So you went from one extreme to another.
But I thought it was all approved by Dennis Prager, because he'd endorsed Robert E. Stoller, this great UCLA psychiatrist. He'd written a lot of books about the dynamics of sexual excitement and written 2 specific books on the pornography industry. So I thought I was just like following the footsteps of a great academic psychiatrist.
And there wasn't anything remotely dirty or anything.
Right.
I thought it was interesting historically, and it was a really, really interesting book. And it was a matter of fact, and I enjoyed it a lot. So how long did it take you to write that book? What was the name of the book again?
A History of X, 100 Years of Sex in Film.
Okay.
It took a year.
That's it. Wow.
And then I started writing a blog on the porn industry. And as I became famous for writing on the porn industry...
This is like 95, 96 when you started?
Yeah, I started in late 95. And my family became increasingly worried about me.
Yeah.
And so they made me an offer I couldn't refuse. They said, we'll pay for your flight back to Australia for a month if you'll consult with the doctors of our choice. I said, fine. So I went back, saw a bunch of doctors, and one of them was a psychiatrist. I met with her for 3 hours, and she gave my family this diagnosis that I had a narcissistic personality disorder / histrionic personality disorder, that I basically only related to other people for the feedback that they could give me about who I am, that I had no sense of self, and that I was constantly relying on feedback, and that I'd gone into writing about the porn industry because this would get me more attention than any other single thing that I could do.
That the histrionic part is
Yeah.
the one you want to get public attention?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
The
Okay.
narcissism and histrionic,
I see.
it's the same thing. So,
There's plenty of that in adult business, for sure.
and so when I got that diagnosis, I read it and I realized there was truth to it. So I went back to psychotherapy. I'd had about a year or so of therapy at this point, but then I went back, and then about 8 years into psychotherapy, I was relaying my fantasies, and I was telling my therapist that like my favorite fantasies were being a powerful person in Hollywood that women would have to have sex with
Right.
to get ahead, and it was
That's a very understandable fantasy.
and it was precisely because they didn't want to do it because they were married.
Yes.
That's precisely is what made it so exciting to
Yeah.
me. That for
I'm
them it was
excited just listening to it.
absolutely degrading,
Yeah.
and that they were selling out their families and their husbands and their
Yeah.
relationships.
Where's Lilith? Why is she gone for this?
I offended her.
She's in bathroom.
And then my other favorite fantasy was having sex with my therapist or with my teacher, like when I was 12 years old,
Yeah.
because the teacher or the therapist would be putting their whole career on the line to
Yeah.
have sex with me. And so it was that
It's very exciting.
degradation, that risk
Yeah.
that made it so exciting to me.
Yeah.
As I'm relaying my fantasies, my therapist says, wow, that sounds a lot like eroticized rage. I'd never heard that term before.
And what is that? What's the definition of that?
Eroticized rage is the anger underneath sexuality. So it refers both to how you have sex, like an angry way that you have sex, but also into the manipulation that you use to get sex. It means that you get off on breaking the rules. So for me, sex is most exciting if I imagine that I'm raping the woman.
Right.
So I'd have my
Oh,
girlfriends.
just like the Japanese.
I'd have my girlfriends tell me no, no, no. And we'd have a safe word. The safe word would be Pittsburgh because they beat the Cowboys in 2 Super Bowls in the 1970s. So, but we always had a safe word, and so it was always, we didn't get too crazy. I said, don't punch me, don't bite me, no bruises, but just resist me, without doing any physical imagery. And so I'd have them say, no, stop, no, you're hurting me.
Yeah.
That's what gets me excited. Or I'd have her pretend to be my therapist.
Yeah.
And like sit on the couch there and ask me questions until I can't take it anymore. Have to screw her. Or, pretend to be my 8th grade teacher.
Yeah.
Like all these scenarios. And it was because they were wrong is what got me excited. And so when I was having regular sex, I was closing my eyes and imagining that I was getting with the clerk at Ralph's or getting with my friend's wife or all these other perverse fantasies. So I didn't realize that I was pursuing intensity in my sexual relationships rather than intimacy. And that was destroying the relationships. I'd never had a relationship that lasted much longer than a year.
But you weren't pursuing then relationships with women who had the same problems. Because I remember my safe word was abracadabra, and it was the same kind of thing, and it had to be, and this was my first.
Wait, is that an Arab thing? Like what's
Abracadabra? No, it's just a random word that she could use, but she never wanted to. This is my first long-term relationship.
It's an awkward word.
No. But
Yeah, by the
point.
time you finish saying it, she's got a broken
Yeah,
wrist.
she's got a broken neck.
Rib, yeah.
But maybe that was the point. But she also couldn't be aroused unless she felt like she was being taken advantage of. Yeah.
No, I know a lot of women who cannot get aroused unless the scenario is perverse.
Yes. So then you.
Yeah, we had incredibly hot sex.
Right. Yes.
But it does not build intimacy. You're building intensity.
No, right.
We had high intensity, but it's not building intimacy, not bonding two people.
Okay, I had a girl. One of the girls. Let me just say that's
Joey, before you
God damn it!
before you continue, because I keep hearing this word all the time, and I just take it for granted. But when you say intimacy, what does it mean? Like I have I know.
Okay, that's yeah.
I mean, I know that's like if you're studying physics, atom is the basic block of universe. But I mean, you keep saying like. Why is it so important?
Okay. Yeah.
Let Lilith handle this one.
Because he goes to the bathroom.
Wait, hold on.
I think
Before, okay, sorry, I'm sorry. Go
Well,
ahead.
intimacy is important because it
No, but
builds
Yoshi
a-
doesn't know what it is. He doesn't understand what it is.
Okay, intimacy is basically.
He's laughing because I'm really serious.
I know. Okay, intimacy is like a personal, close connection.
Right.
You can build and
It
develop.
doesn't.
That is beyond sexual impulse, perversion, or any kind of other desire that would be lucrative to another kind of
So there's no money involved.
gratification. You usually don't need to pay for intimacy.
Okay.
Tough to make
But
intimacy
intimacy is much
funny.
more about an emotional, maybe an intellectual, spiritual connection. It's connecting with someone on a level that is much more profound than a gratification or impulse gratification, especially.
But I mean, you can have intimacy with friends.
Of course,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
There's
yeah.
so many variations and levels of intimacy. There's friends, lovers, of course, teacher-student relationships. I mean, parents and kids.
But Yoshi, I can only speak for myself, but in my experience, you can absolutely have intimacy with friends. But there's an intimacy that a man can have with with a woman.
Or a woman with another woman,
Well,
or a man with another
Right.
man.
Well, the
Okay,
intimacy
if you're-
that builds into a relationship with sex
Mhm.
is usually the healthiest and most ideal way to have a relationship with someone into the opposite sex or same sex if you're into that as well.
Right.
That includes sex and includes emotional and
It's the most.
But
powerful.
I have to say, I did not come from a culture that really promote that. I don't think.
I understand. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I have.
I mean, it's as silly as it might sound, but it's just such a really weird alien concept because.
I hope Luke is taking a piss and not a shit because I really want him to come back here because there's things on this that there he is.
Yeah.
Here's one of my challenges on intimacy, and I'd like to say this.
But look, before you continue, and I want you to continue. I would just basically said to Lily, I come from a culture, Japan, where intimacy is not a. It's really not that.
It's not.
It doesn't seem like it's such a important thing. It was not encouraged. So when I said, "What the heck is intimacy? Why is it important?" It's silly as it might sound in the West. I'm telling you.
You know what?
It
You know
doesn't
what's not
sound silly.
Can
It sounds soul destroying to me.
Can I say that?
And that's what I
not
do. I
silly
destroy
because
souls.
Most people don't know how to form intimate relationships, and they think they know because they think through sex and through other kinds of.
If it was sex,
that it's intimate, but it's not.
Here's a mind.
It's much deeper than that. It's much more evolved than that, and takes time to build. It's not something that just you do. It takes time.
Yeah.
So that you're not alone in that because most people.
I'm not sad about it. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Oh, yes, you are. Yes, you are. But I have a special mind fuck for you. This is my situation with intimacy.
You have too
And
much.
allowing
No,
yourself,
you have too much
and
intimacy.
One more thing. One more thing. Important thing. Allowing yourself to be vulnerable is a big part of intimacy.
Huge part of it.
Huge part of intimacy.
I'm very vulnerable.
Yeah, yeah.
I could be homeless.
Not venereal disease.
yeah.
But
Not vulnerable. Right. No. Here's my intimacy mindfuck. First of all, I need intimacy. I in all my relationships, and I can really only get it from as much as I love my friends. I need it from a woman.
Yes.
And I need like really deep intimacy. I love intimacy. My problem is that sexually, I have the same. When Luke first started talking about eroticized rage, I had never heard the term before, but I immediately felt like I knew what he was talking about because when I get aroused, it turns into
It seems
not
like
to
it's
put too head a point to find a point on it. Sex and kind of violence and degradation are all kind of mixed together.
Absolutely.
And the problem is that I need, but I also have this huge craving for intimacy. But sex is a very imperfect tool for getting at that intimacy because I want to because I want to I want to destroy you as a human being once I'm aroused. So it's very tricky because I want I don't know what to do about those, but those have caused that contradiction has caused a lot of problems in my life.
Have you encountered men who wanted to
Destroy your soul.
Oh, I like that. Yes, yeah, that's part of my good sex life is
men who want to destroy your essence?
But I like to do it with like one man or two at the most. I don't like doing that with strangers. My sense of intimacy comes from connecting with someone emotionally, where we can build that kind of relationship where he's somewhat pseudo-raping me, or like there is that dominant, submissive feel to it, and there is a little bit of degradation or a little bit of violence, but it's mostly tame. But underneath it all, I know there's love. So that's why, to me, it's okay. That's how I
It sounds
justify it.
fucking great.
It's amazing.
Magnificent.
But like I said, but would I be able to do that with a stranger?
Right.
No way. Like I've had the same lover for 4 years, and I'll have another guy that I'll sleep with for like a year or 2 years, and I think it just that to me makes it exciting, and that to me allows myself to be comfortable to be taken to that place, because it is arousing to me too to feel that kind of stuff.
So going back, sorry, look. So going back when you were starting talking intimacy, I don't remember what.
So as soon as I heard the term eroticized rage,
Okay,
I went home and Googled the topic,
Yeah.
and I learned that it was a symptom of sex addiction.
I see.
And so I've had several people tell me that they thought I was a sex addict, but I never took it seriously. But
Yeah.
as soon as I heard the term eroticized rage, that spoke to my deepest soul. And so as I researched eroticized rage, I learned that even if you express it in socially acceptable ways, such as I was doing within monogamous relationships and everything
Yeah.
was consensual and safe, that the rage was still like a cancer that was like eating away at my life, and it would express itself in seemingly innocuous ways, but in my sense of humor, there's like a lot of rage underneath my sense of humor. I like putting people down.
Yeah.
And I realized that this was just poisoning my whole life. And it was poisoning the way I just interacted with ordinary people in ordinary days. And so I said, I better find myself a 12-step program. So my therapist recommended a particular 12-step program. There are about 8 different 12-step programs for sex addiction. And I started going in June of 2011.
But you were still writing. Oh, when
I quit writing on the porn industry in 2007.
I see.
This is after I left the porn industry. And I quit looking at porn. I got to the 12-step program, and I noticed that I was feeling sober, not just in the meetings, but coming out of them.
Mm-hmm.
And that was changing the way I related to people in ordinary life. And it was also changing my masturbatory fantasies. They weren't quite as nasty. I wasn't quite as driven to want to destroy people in my fantasies. And then as I kept working the program, I eventually completely stopped masturbation, which really was life-changing, because I realized once I quit masturbating that I had been going through life kind of collecting erotic scenarios to use in my masturbatory fantasies. And as I quit the masturbation, I was able to relate to women more as human beings instead of as objects to use for my masturbatory fantasies. And it created a sense of calm and a sense of sobriety, and kind of brought a clarity to my life.
Right.
And so I realized that I had been using sex as a drug, because when I would masturbate or have sex, that would be the absolute highlight of my day. And still to this day, even though I've been working the program, still sexual things are the most tempting to me of anything. That is still my drug.
Yes.
That's the one that drives me more than anything. But as I developed increasing sobriety, I was able to start feeling a little more at home and at ease with myself and with other people. And I realized that the sex addiction and the porn addiction was a mask. It was just a disguise for what I have at core as an intimacy disorder. I was disconnected from myself and from other people. And if you're pursuing things that are destroying your life, it's a pretty good chance that you have an addiction. So some people it's alcohol, some people it's drugs, some people it's food or gambling, and for other people it's porn and masturbation and the like. So as I calmed down and kept working the program, I've been able to feel increasingly at ease with myself and with other people, and I found it transforming.
Did you feel more love for yourself in your sobriety?
Yeah. That is so difficult to talk about. Like the sex addiction is so easy to talk about, but the self-love is so hard to talk about because
it's so intimate, right?
It's so intimate, and it's a cliche in our society, and I struggle with it. But what I'm trying to do is the things that I was looking through my love addiction, the thing that I was wanting to be rescued, the things that I wanted my love object to do for me, I'm trying to learn to do for myself, so that when I'm tired, I rest, and when I'm hungry, I eat, and I try to take a little bit better care of myself. When I'm cold, I put on a jacket. I try to keep my place tidy and neat.
Yeah.
And these little habits of self-care, like I really need to get a haircut right now. And so these little things of self-care, they change the way you relate to yourself and then to other people. As you start taking better care of yourself, it can transform your life, and you're not distracted by this overwhelming high. Like I love the YouPorn.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Like I love the John Thompson Bukkake videos. They're just like amazing, and I used to love that stuff, and I would look forward to that, and that would be like the highlight 20 minutes of my day.
Now, I want to talk, what you start doing with your sobriety and continue on with your show, but I want people to know who you were back in the blogger days, adult. So you're writing a book, you started writing a blog, lookfor.com, was it?
Yes.
And so how did you get your source back then? How did you get your source, and when did you knew, what was the day when you realized you had an influence in the business?
Well, I remember, I think it was third grade, we were sitting on this swing bridge and told to write about the stream that was below us. I just wrote these disconnected phrases, and because I didn't quite understand the assignment, but when I read them, people were so moved. And so that's when I realized in second or third grade how much my writing could affect people.
Right.
So I never had any doubt after second or third grade that my writing could really affect people. As far as becoming influential in the industry, it was kind of similar to the approach that I take in the singles ads. I'm very much of a numbers man.
Yeah.
I just sent out hundreds of interview requests.
Yeah.
I just interviewed as many people as I could, just like I used to answer as many singles ads as I could. And just simply meeting enough people, you start developing connections, information, things start making sense, and you really develop an understanding of the industry and get a lot of great stories.
So, just as an example of the influence that he had, before I met Luke, I lived 8,000 miles away on another continent, and I knew who Luke was. I'd seen one of your documentaries. I forget which one it was.
Give Me Your Soul?
Give Me Your Soul, yeah. So, I'm sitting there on the western end of Europe, and decided to learn a little bit about the porn industry, because I was curious about how it worked with the women, how they got into it. Yeah. And Luke was the person who just through Googling around and stuff, became my entryway. So he was really kind of almost like the public face of the pornography industry for quite some time.
Because they really didn't have one, except maybe back in those days, Janet Jameson or Ron Jeremy. But
But no one could talk about it.
Nobody could talk about it the way you could, and you brought credibility to the business because you were able to explain to people. Because anyone who was not a part of the business is very mystifying back then.
Yeah, very, very.
And I was, in a way, I was helped by my personality disorder in that it was very easy for me to turn off all human feelings about the people I was writing about. Normally, it's very difficult to hang out with people. I was perhaps the first and only person who hung out in the industry day after day, week after week for years, and yet wrote about the industry with complete lack of emotion, with complete disinterest. Normally, when you get around people, you start feeling bonds and emotional closeness to them, but because of my brokenness, I was able to hang out with these people and yet feel no emotional connection that would stop my reporting what I wanted to report. So in a way, my lack of intimacy and my lack of human connection enabled my blogging.
What drove you to do the reporting? Did that give you a sense of meaning and purpose? And because it sounds like you were also reporting things that were just factual and that were interesting, but of course maybe damaging for the people.
Well,
you're talking about.
I knew how much I was interested in porn, so part of it was my own fascination. And then it became the way I made a living. And then I had this idea that if I could just get my story out there, I could find some solutions for my chronic health problems. I thought if I get a huge website that tens of thousands of people read, if I just have a little corner of it where I talk about my own struggles and my own problems,
Yes.
that I'll get some guidance and help.
I see. Because I remember the first time I think I heard about you was when you released that 1998 HIV outbreak. I think you were the first guy to say it. And 97, you know, John Stelliano, who owns Evil Angel, I mean, it was just shocking news to me. He was tested HIV positive because he supposedly sexual intercourse with a transsexual, which shocked me because I think most people in the business didn't know he was bisexual. And then following you releasing that news, it was like a shocker to me, you know. And that's when I remember hearing your name. It was Trisha Dibrow, who happened to be my ex-boss's wife, Brooke Ashley, and Kimberly J. I think those are the three.
Yeah, those are the three names that I broke in early 1988.
Were
HIV infections.
Were they angry when you released this information? Because were they trying to like kind of hush-hush about it? Because I think the pornographers were afraid, they didn't want the government intervention and trying to pass policies.
People, they were emotionally flooded,
Mhm.
and so they were just flooded, and the industry was flooded with fear. And because I was emotionally disconnected, it was easy for me to see the story and report on it. And I had no emotional fears for the industry. Like, it didn't matter to me what the government decided to do with this information.
Right.
I simply
And I just want to make sure, because people don't know, in 1998, a male performer named Mark Wallace, if I remember right, I don't know how he got the HIV, but he was HIV positive. He doctored health paperwork, because every performers before the scene have to make sure they're HIV negative and other STD and so on and so forth to protect each other. He made a fake health result, so you know, he had a bunch of scenes that a couple months, and he ended up infecting 3 people. And it was like shocking news to me, you know. And last year, Mr. Marcus had a syphilis. He doctored his documentation. So, you know, I'm very protective of comedians, but as critical I am with the business, I worry about the performers first. Then, of course, I also worry about kids not being having access to pornography and things like that. So, to me, I think you did the right thing, because people have to know. I'm sure that wasn't the first time somebody tried something like that. Even though within the business, I'm sure people had mixed feelings about you, right?
Oh, yeah. I was often called the most hated man in the industry.
Right.
I had a lot of death threats. I was knocked around physically a few times. But I noticed with Mark Wallace that all the people who were catching HIV had worked with Mark Wallace a few weeks prior and had done unprotected anal sex.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I was able to uncover him as patient zero in this outbreak.
I see.
And also Luke's sitting here, and I'm not denying it's true, he's talking about how he was emotionally disconnected, and that's what allowed him to do this. If I recall correctly, one of the things you discussed in your documentary was that these girls who would come in, there's this whole kind of, oh, we're all one community, and we all love each other, and we all got each other's back. And then these girls who were kind of used up by the industry and spat out were completely disregarded and forgotten. And this whole bullshit about community was kind of a pretense that allowed people to be worse than disconnected from these girls, to totally neglect them and dehumanize them.
Well, the career for a female porn star is a few months, while the career for a male porn star is often 10 years.
So what happens to the female porn star after she's been used up and her utility in the industry is gone?
And you also happen to answer that very question you talk about in a new documentary, Life After Porn. And I thought you're the most honest guy in that thing. I mean, everyone was honest, but your level of honesty was even higher at the point of even made the viewers uncomfortable. But I thought you did the service by telling the truth. I mean, I got a bit of an argument with Bill Margo, who runs Free Speech Coalition. I thought, and then I talk about this in a couple other episodes when we did Brandon Iron, but I did have concern for the girls, even though I am a scumbag pervert.
Yes, this is true.
Very true.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a mixed feelings because they should be protected, you know, because they do it for a few months, maybe a year or two, and they disappear. I just wonder, like, what happened to them, you know? And one of the unreleased episodes, we talk about Haley Page and Chico Wayne. I don't want to get detailed because that's another bit that people should hear, but I do care about them, even though I'm sexually attracted to them. But once I get to know them...
You're attracted to somebody named Chico Wang?
No.
Okay.
I'm talking about girls in the business.
Oh, I see.
problem with me is once I get to know the girls, that those feelings dies. I don't. Once I get to know them, the fantasy's dead. But I do care about them. I don't.
Teaching intimacy.
I think the industry does not do a very good job of helping them make transition from adult business to elsewhere and get other help at all.
Yeah, I mean, how do you transition from like taking penises in your anus to what other jobs does that prepare you for aside from working as a prostitute?
But I think pornography is important because I really do believe that, because I think if you don't have enough sex, porn is kind of like vitamin in a way. It's a supplement if you're not getting enough nutrient from the things you're consuming day to day.
I told you I knew in my life a man named Joe Hooker, who was the great-grandchild of General Joe Hooker from the Civil War. And the word hooker comes from his family because he needed to have a large group of women following behind his Civil War regiment, because unless they were having sex with these women, they couldn't fight well because they were too discombobulated. So there's definitely a service that's provided. There's no doubt about that.
And it's hypocritical for the society to reject them and treat them the way they're treating them, because I think they're important, and I do like a lot of them, and I don't care what people say. It really, really is important, and I think we do need to do a better job appreciating them and treat them better. I'm very naive about that, even though
I don't think there's anything that a human being can do beyond taking semen on your face that will destroy your humanity.
Yeah.
Because once girls start getting photographed taking cum shots to the face, from then on for the rest of their life, most people won't treat them as human beings. You could be a torturer.
Said that. Andy was talking about that, how a porn star wants to have sex.
Andy who?
Andy Milonakis.
Good job.
And my Greek friend. And he was saying how he just doesn't prefer having sex with porn stars, because as soon as he Googles them, he sees all these images with all these cocks on them and sperm on their face and what have you. And I mean, is that traumatizing to a man then to see that based on a woman?
Only if they're black penises. I think otherwise we're okay.
When you're white, it's seeing a black penis on a girl.
No.
I guess that's a big difference with him, because when I see pictures like, oh, she'll let you do that. So
how do you see that, Lee?
I think it destroys them. For most people, can no longer relate to them as human.
yeah.
Right.
That they cease to be human beings.
So
And they're just seen as sexual objects.
you had a very
They're seen as trash, the lowest form of trash. They're seen in some way worse than genocidal murderers. They're just
What are your feelings about that?
I think that's just built into the human condition. There's something about sex that is just so powerful that every community has developed taboos relating to it. And therefore, for communities to survive, they have to regulate sexuality. And if you break those taboos, you are trash. That's just that's how life works. It's not America. Like in Scandinavia, in Denmark, if you are photographed taking cum shots to the face, you're not an esteemed member of society. That's universal. It's just the way the human being works. There's some taboos that you can't break publicly and expect whoever be treated as a human being.
It's terrible. I'm very naive. I would like someday that to change and have more respect for them.
Good luck.
Do you feel religion plays a big part in that one?
It might, but even without religion, even secular people don't treat girls like this as human beings. It's just built in. There are certain taboos. Every society has sexual taboos, and every society does not relate well to women or men who get photographed, getting doused in semen.
Yeah, religion may incorporate those taboos, but they probably
transcend religion.
I don't know that would turn me off to a woman necessarily, but it might make me more violent toward her when I was aroused.
All right, I don't want to run out of time, so I just want to summarize by saying you got a very successful career at it, and then you had quite a bit of influence back when you were blogging and reporting. You were in 60 Minutes. You did a wonderful job in it, and you really was conduit between porn and mainstream media, and some people in pornography field were afraid of you, but you were very successful at it. You're out. And now you're, with Orthodox Judaism pursued, and it's really interesting listening to you, because when Joy told me about it, there's many YouTube clips you guys were debating and talking about that. I highly recommend people to look at those, Luke Ford and Joy Kurtzman. But I just want to give you all the time you need to talk about your show because this is something that's important. I want everybody to come to the show. Name of the show, where you're performing, and
Thank
what
you,
day.
thank you so much. Yeah, go to eroticizedrage.com for more information. I'm doing my next performance April 4th at Beyond Baroque in Venice, 7 p.m. It's a Thursday night. And for more information about eroticized rage and sex addiction, go to my website, eroticizedrage.com.
And can you talk more about that? You know,
It's a show about how I learned that I have these crippling emotional addictions, which are at core an intimacy disorder. At core, I'm fundamentally uncomfortable with myself, with other people, and with God. And how I come to realize that I have these crippling addictions, and how I tackle them through working a 12-step program and start to make some progress towards leading a normal life. What's that Duran Duran song, Out Somewhere Out There? There's a normal world that one day I hope to find.
Right,
Hungry like a wolf?
No, not that one.
Right.
Ordinary world.
Yeah, ordinary.
Joey, can you give because you went to see it?
Yeah.
Can you give us
I just
like a Roger Ebert-like critique and
It's a little
ratings?
longer than the Roger Ebert thing, but it's
Would you
concise enough.
Would you give him a 5 started David?
I would give him five Magen David, 5 stars of David. But I just want to say this: for 6 years, I lived in Ireland, which is known for its fantastic theater.
Absolutely.
And
James Joyce.
But it wasn't just Joyce. It was. I saw everything Ireland had to offer, and no matter what they do, it's just a very powerful environment for theater. I went every single weekend with my ex-wife. We would always go to theater in Ireland, and I was always looking for something. I was always looking for something that would kind of tear at whatever knots I had in my chest. And I remember seeing
Nazis?
Yeah, well, Nazis are always good, but not
Saying Nazi to a Jew is like saying nuclear bomb to me, right?
No, that's not true. We like to talk about Nazis. But there was Brian Friel was one Irish playwright in particular who was very powerful for me. But whatever I was looking for throughout those 6 years, I never quite got. And when I saw Luke's one-man play, that was what I had been looking for the entire time. It was the single most powerful evening of theater I've experienced in my entire life, and that's after looking very hard for quite some time. I can't give it a more powerful endorsement than that. It was an extremely powerful experience for me. I really want those people who are close to me. I want you and I want Dave in particular to go to that goddamn show. I think you need it.
Yeah.
April 4th, Venice, we're there.
Yeah, please come. Everyone who's close to me, please come. Everyone who's not close to me, come anyway. It's mind blowing. So if you care about yourself at all, if you have any self-respect, for God's sakes, show up.
Thank you, and it's only $8.
Yeah.
And I think we're not. So we're airing this podcast on March 18th. So that will give you a little over 2 weeks. I will tell all my close friends with over 100,000 Twitter accounts to just retweet and talk about it. But I want people to come. I hope you have a chance to film it.
It has to be filmed.
Yeah, and maybe even make DVDs on it. And I think maybe even commentaries and things like that. But when Joey was away in Japan, like a couple of months, I would call Luke and we go out and have a conversation. And it's so fun to talk to Luke, because he's so honest, and he didn't make me uncomfortable. That's the funny thing. It's a little different because other comedians, when they're so honest, it makes me uncomfortable. But I really appreciate it because I have those feelings too,
Yeah, Luke's not trying to make anybody uncomfortable.
No,
he's
no.
just telling. He's just kind of telling like it is. But it's. I don't remember what I was going to say. But I think a lot of, again, I keep going back to the DVD ASA podcast and how they get 30,000, however many listeners they get a month, and anybody who listens to that needs to come to this too. And I hope Luke goes on that podcast as well, because I really think that we live in Los Angeles, the locus of kind of therapeutic culture in this country. And for anyone to spend all their time going to a therapist and not to go to this show, to me, is just very, very foolhardy. No, I mean that. I'm not.
No, that's good. Yeah.
I mean, so I'm hoping.
And here's the thing: I do look at the breakdown and who listens to what. I have done this before, but anyone who's listened to this, you're overseas, whether you're in Europe or Australia or UK, Japan, wherever it is. If you're interested in having Luke perform in your countries, contact him because it's such an honest thing, and people don't talk about it. And the bigger the country with the too many taboos, I think they need to hear something like this. So yeah,
I don't think Europe has the balls. If there's Europeans listening, I don't think you have the balls for this show. To be honest, I'd be really impressed.
Scandinavia. It's just because
Fucking
I think
cowards.
Luke is very very funny too, and I like hearing these conversations because not enough of it is talk. So,
Yeah.
look, what's your all your information, like what's your Twitter account address?
Yeah, just go to eroticizedrange.com or moralleader.com and you'll get connected to everything I'm doing. I'll just go to...
Is Luke4.net yours?
Yeah, Luke4.net
Okay.
is mine. Go to YouTube, put in Luke4.
Yeah, and any religious things that the listeners are interested, it's Luke Ford and our good friend Joy Kirchman. It's really fun to listen to that. And I mean, Lily, do you have anything to add? Because you know, I respect your opinion about therapy, and you know, it's always tough on you because you're usually the only female in the group. But do you have any concerns, recommendation, or you know, to Luke? I mean,
Well, it seems as if you are on your path and you've found something that works for you and something that also is healing and allowing you to be in your being as opposed to being a product of something that is just outlashing to anger or abuse or not having the love that you needed. So, I mean, it just sounds like just having this short time with you, hearing a little bit about your evolution in yourself was quite a beautiful transformation, and that you continue to do that. And now that you are also using it to put into a show, I think is fantastic to reach other people and continue to be an inspiration to others, and still continue to build a better relationship to yourself, which is ultimately the most important thing you can do.
enjoy. Anything more to add for our good friend Luke?
No, I mean, I just, Lily said something about inspiring. I mean, I often think of myself, I guess, you know, maybe it's an ego thing of being more kind of staring myself down more directly than other people do and being aware of my own frailties and weaknesses. One of the things I came away from Luke's show with was thinking, boy, I've got a lot of room for progress still. Yeah, it is really inspiring in that respect, and all I can do is reiterate my hope that as many people as possible will give themselves a chance to see it.
I have to say, as a friend, I really appreciate your friendship, and I know even with adult business, it took a lot of courage because there are, believe it or not, there's a lot of crazy people in adult business, and I've dealt with those craziness, both verbal and physical threats. So I know, like a great quarterback for Cowboys, Mr. Staubach.
Roger Staubach.
Roger Staubach. You literally took beatings from those psychopath and crazy people in the adult business, but every time he got hit, you got up and you reported. He did a wonderful job. I love the conversation I have with you, and I just hope that you have a good or better relationship, or have some relationship with your dad. I don't know, how's that going? Is that still good? Because he's getting kind of up there in age, right?
Yeah, he's 84. So,
yeah. Is it?
It's difficult.
It's a difficult.
His life is all about Jesus. So
yeah.
And it's been very difficult.
And a great person as you are, it's really tough to compete with Jesus. I'm not a religious person to say, but that's a tough one. But I'm going to come to see you on April 4th, and I'm looking forward to it. And I think everybody should, if you can't see it, just contact him. Maybe he could make a DVD, and he could, he needs the money to do bigger and better projects. So I'm hoping he'd tape it. I hope he could sell it to you guys. I hope you guys are generous enough to bring him to your country and have him performance. And because Luke is just an amazing person, and all the stories from adult business and his religious interest, fantastic. So I'll finish the show with Luke, your last words, and we'll get out of here.
Well, thank you so much. I'd love to have you guys catch my show either live or on YouTube about learning, coming to grips with yourself and with the things that are holding you back. So my understanding of addiction is that the reward centers in your brain operate in a way that does not allow you to make good decisions. So if you find that there are parts of your life where you're consistently making bad decisions, you may well have an addiction, and there is ways to get help for that.
Thanks, Luke. Thanks, Joey. Thank you, Ernie.
Guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Rock and roll.
Let's go to rehab.
Yeah.
Wow. Good night.